The rain had been relentless all evening, a cold, steady downpour that made the neon lights outside, Marty's diner, shimmer on the wet asphalt like melted glass. Inside, the clatter of plates and the faint hum of the jukebox filled the small space with warmth. Emma Carter moved quickly between tables, her curly brown hair tied up, her white apron slightly stained from a long day's work. She was on her last shift before closing, tired but still smiling as she wiped down the counter. It was nearly midnight when the door creaked open and a gust of cold air swept through. Emma looked up. An old man stood in the doorway, soaked from head to toe. His gray hair was plastered to his forehead, and his coat looked like it had been through a storm, which, of course, it had. He held a crumpled paper bag close to his chest, as if it was something precious. For a moment, he just stood there, blinking against the light and shivering. Emma's heart ached at the sight. Without hesitation, she set down her cloth and hurried over. "Sir, please come in," she said gently. "You'll catch your death out there." The man hesitated, his voice trembling. I don't have any money, miss. Just needed a place to get warm for a bit." Emma smiled softly. "Don't worry about that. Come on, sit by the heater." She guided him to a booth near the back, where the old radiator hissed softly. He sank into the seat, water dripping from his sleeves onto the floor. Emma quickly fetched a towel from the back and draped it over his shoulders. "You're very kind," he murmured. His voice was gravelly but warm, the kind that carried stories of many hard years. Emma brought him a steaming cup of coffee and a bowl of soup, sliding them in front of him with a reassuring smile. "On the house," she said. "Eat while it's hot." He looked down at the meal as though he hadn't seen one in days. "You don't have to do this," he whispered. "I know," Emma replied simply, "but I want to." As the old man began to eat, Emma sat across from him for a moment. "What's your name, sir?" she asked. "William," he said quietly. "Used to work around here years ago. Guess I just wandered too far from home tonight." Emma nodded, trying not to pry. The rain pounded harder against the windows, and for a few moments, the world outside didn't exist. Just the warm diner, the smell of soup, and two people sharing kindness. But that peace didn't last long. The kitchen door swung open, and out stomped Carl, the diner's manager. A tall, heavy-set man with thinning hair and a permanent scowl, he immediately noticed the old man sitting there. "What's going on here?" Carl barked. "We're closed." Emma turned quickly. "Carl," he was standing out in the rain. "He's freezing, and, I don't care," Carl interrupted, his voice rising. "You know the rules. No customers after closing." Emma stood her ground, something she rarely did with him. "He's not a customer, he's just a man who needed help. I gave him soup and coffee. It's not like it'll bankrupt the place." Carl's eyes narrowed. "You think you can decide what this business can afford? You're a waitress, Emma, not the owner." The old man tried to speak up, his voice weak. "Please, don't blame her. I'll leave." But Carl ignored him. "Get out," he snapped. Then, turning to Emma, he jabbed a finger toward her. "And you, hand me your apron. You're done here." Emma froze. "You're firing me, for helping someone, for breaking rules," Carl growled. "You think this is a charity? Maybe you should go work at one." The old man's eyes widened in shock. "She was kind to me," he protested, "the only one who was." "You can't." Carl turned on him coldly. "You can leave before I call the cops." Emma looked at the trembling old man, then back at Carl. Her heart pounded with anger and disbelief. She slowly untied her apron and laid it on the counter. "If helping someone in need gets me fired," she said quietly, "then I don't want to work here anyway." The diner fell silent. Only the rain filled the space again. Emma helped the old man to his feet, guided him to the door, and pressed her umbrella into his hands. "Take this," she said softly. "Stay dry." He looked at her with tears in his eyes. "Thank you, dear. You've got a good soul." She smiled faintly, her own eyes misting. "Take care of yourself, okay?" As the door closed behind them, Emma stepped out into the rain, now jobless and uncertain of what tomorrow would bring, but somewhere deep inside, she knew she had done the right thing. And sometimes, that's the only thing that matters. The next morning, sunlight crept weakly through Emma's thin curtains, casting pale lines across her small apartment. She lay awake long before dawn, her thoughts tangled with worry. The sound of rain from last night still echoed in her head, along with Carl's harsh voice, "You're done here." Emma sat up slowly, rubbing her tired eyes. The little alarm clock on her nightstand blinked 8:02 a.m. She had overslept, but it didn't matter anymore. She had no job to rush to. The diner, her second home for nearly 2 years, had tossed her out like she was nothing. She made a cup of instant coffee and sat by the window, staring at the street below. The world carried on as if nothing had happened. People hurried to work, buses roared past, and the bakery across the street released the sweet smell of fresh bread. Emma sighed. Her rent was due in 5 days, her savings were nearly gone, and she had no idea what she'd do next. A sharp knock startled her. She frowned, glancing at the door. Hardly anyone visited her. She opened it hesitantly, and found a man in a black suit standing in the hallway. He looked professional, serious, holding a leather folder and an envelope. "Miss Emma Carter?" he asked politely. "Yes, that's me." He smiled faintly and handed her the envelope. "I'm here on behalf of Mr. William Turner." Emma blinked. "William Turner," she repeated. Then it clicked. The old man from last night. "Is he okay?" she asked quickly. "He's perfectly fine, miss," the man said. "In fact, he asked me to deliver this personally." He gave a polite nod and walked away, leaving Emma standing in the doorway with the envelope trembling in her hands. She tore it open. Inside was a folded letter, written in elegant cursive handwriting. "Greater than dear Emma, kindness is a rare gift in this world, one too often punished rather than rewarded. But I believe in recognizing goodness where it still lives. If you can, please meet me at Marty's Diner at noon today. There's something important I wish to discuss. With gratitude, William Turner." Emma read it twice, unsure what to think. Why would he want to meet me? She almost convinced herself not to go. After what happened, she didn't want to set foot in that place again, not with Carl there. But curiosity, and maybe a bit of hope, pushed her to change her clothes and head out. By noon, the sun had broken through the clouds, leaving puddles glistening on the streets. Emma walked toward the diner nervously, her heart thudding. She paused outside, staring at the familiar sign. Through the window, she could see customers chatting, waitresses moving about, and Carl behind the counter, looking as sour as ever. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled. The noise in the diner dipped slightly as a few of her former coworkers glanced up in surprise. Carl's face turned red the moment he saw her. "What are you doing here?" he snapped. "You have no business coming back." Emma opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, a familiar voice called from the back booth. "She's here with me, Carl." It was the old man, William Turner. But he looked different, clean-shaven, wearing a neatly pressed suit, and sitting upright with a calm, confident expression. Next to him sat the same man in a black suit from earlier, now sipping coffee. Carl froze mid-step. "Mr. Turner," he said slowly, his tone suddenly respectful. I didn't know you were here." "I figured as much," William said evenly. "You didn't know who I was last night either, did you?" Carl looked confused. "Sir, William turned toward Emma and smiled kindly. "Emma, please sit." Emma slid into the booth across from him, still unsure what was happening. You own this diner?" she asked quietly. "Not just this one," he said. "I own the entire chain. I built Marty's Diner from the ground up over 40 years ago. These days, I like to visit my locations unannounced, to see how my staff treats people." Emma's eyes widened in shock. Carl looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. William continued, his gaze shifting to the manager. "Last night, I came in looking like I had nothing. I wanted to see if anyone here still had compassion. Everyone turned me away, except her." He nodded toward Emma. "She treated me like a human being. Offered warmth and food, without expecting anything in return. That's the kind of heart I want leading my business." Carl stammered, "Sir, I was only following policy. We can't serve after hours." "Policy doesn't replace humanity," William said sharply. "You fired someone for showing decency. That tells me everything I need to know about your leadership." He turned back to Emma, smiling gently. "As of today, you're the new manager of this diner." Emma's jaw dropped. "What, me?" William chuckled softly. "You earned it, my dear. This place needs someone who knows what real service means. Carl, you can collect your things by the end of the day." The diner fell completely silent. A few employees looked at Emma in awe, whispering among themselves. Carl stood frozen, his face red with humiliation. Emma could hardly breathe. "Mr. Turner, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep being yourself," he said. "That's enough." As she shook his hand, Emma realized something she'd never forget. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness, the one that costs you everything, can become the very thing that changes your entire life. The morning air felt different, lighter somehow, as Emma stood in front of Marty's diner once more, only this time, she wasn't just a waitress walking in for another shift. The same neon sign flickered above her, but now, beneath it, hung a fresh plaque with her name, Manager, Emma Carter. She stared at it for a long moment, hardly believing it was real. Just 2 days ago, she had walked out of this place humiliated and jobless. Today, she was walking back in as the person in charge. It felt surreal. Her heart thudded with a mix of pride, disbelief, and quiet determination. Inside, the diner buzzed with its usual rhythm, clinking cups, murmured conversations, and the hum of the coffee machine. But something was different in the air. Her coworkers, many of whom had witnessed her firing, now looked at her with new respect, some even with admiration. They whispered to each other, trying to piece together how the once soft-hearted waitress had suddenly become their boss. Emma smiled at them, not arrogantly, but warmly, the same gentle smile she'd worn when she was one of them. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her tone calm but confident. "Let's make today a good one." A few offered shy smiles back. One of the newer waitresses, Lily, approached her nervously. "Emma, I just wanted to say, congratulations. You deserve it. What you did for that man, it was brave." Emma's heart softened. "Thank you, Lily, and remember something, if you ever have to choose between kindness and rules, choose kindness. We can fix mistakes, but not a lost heart." As the day went on, Emma found herself settling naturally into her new role. She checked inventory, helped a cook who burned a batch of pancakes, and even took orders when the line got too long. She didn't sit in the office barking instructions like Carl used to. She was everywhere, listening, helping, encouraging. But not everyone was thrilled about the change. Carl stood silently at the counter, clearing out his things into a box. His face was pale, his movements stiff. He didn't look angry anymore, just hollow. When Emma approached, he wouldn't meet her eyes. "Carl," she said softly, "I didn't want it to end like this." He let out a bitter laugh. "You didn't want it, you took my job." Emma shook her head. "No, Carl, I didn't take it, I earned it. You fired me for showing compassion. You could have done the same, but you didn't." Carl's jaw tightened, his voice low. "You think being nice will keep this place running? You'll see. The world eats people like you alive." She looked at him steadily. "Maybe, but I'd rather be kind and fail than cruel and succeed." For the first time, Carl looked at her directly. Something flickered in his eyes, shame, maybe, but he said nothing more. He grabbed his box and left quietly, the bell above the door jingling as it closed behind him. Emma stood there for a moment, breathing out slowly. The diner felt oddly peaceful. That afternoon, Mr. Turner stopped by, looking spry and cheerful, his cane tapping lightly on the tiled floor. "How's my new manager doing?" he asked, smiling. Emma laughed, trying to keep up. "But I think it's going well." He nodded approvingly. "I can tell. The atmosphere here already feels different, warmer." "I'm just doing what feels right," she said humbly. "That's exactly why you're the right person for the job," he replied. "Keep that heart of yours, Emma. It's worth more than any business degree." Over the next few weeks, the diner began to change. Emma introduced something she called the Community Meal Program. Every Sunday afternoon, they served a few free meals to anyone in need. At first, the idea made the accountant nervous, but soon, something magical happened. Business grew. People came not just for food, but for the feeling, for the kindness that seemed to live in every corner of the diner. Regular customers began leaving bigger tips, and new faces arrived every day, drawn by the growing reputation of the kind diner. Even local news picked up the story of the waitress turned manager who helped a homeless man and was rewarded with her dream job. One evening, as Emma locked up, rain began to fall again, soft, steady, just like that night weeks ago. She paused by the door, watching the droplets slide down the glass. The reflection of the glowing sign blurred slightly, and she smiled. Then, from across the street, she spotted a familiar figure, an old man under an umbrella, tipping his hat with a knowing grin. "Mr. Turner," gave her a small nod before disappearing around the corner. Emma stood there for a long time, warmth blooming in her chest. The memory of that cold, wet night felt like a lifetime ago, but it was the moment everything changed. She whispered to herself, kindness is never wasted. And as she turned off the diner lights, the neon sign flickered once more, casting a soft pink glow over the words Marty's Diner. But to everyone who walked through its doors now, it meant something more. It wasn't just a place to eat. It was a place where compassion ruled, and where one waitress's simple act of humanity had turned an ordinary diner into something extraordinary.